Hello, and welcome. Today, we're going to be talking about the Nakarthan Empire, one of the most influential empires that has ever existed in the world of Naraka. We're going to be talking about, today, the origins of the empire, such as the Kingdom of Naraka, King Marcus, etc. What was the Nakarthan Empire? The Nakarthan Empire was an empire that spread across the entire continent of Ari. Its capital, however, was located very far away in the city of Nartha, as you can see on the map. Its economy was focused on agriculture, iron, specifically selling it and trading it between provinces, and taxes, depending on the time. This map over here shows the Nakarthan Empire at its height circa 430 during the reign of Marcelian I. So, an important figure we'll have to talk about in the future. The Nakarthan Empire was also known for many was well known for its many scientific advancements during its reign, though we will talk about that later. The origin of the empire. The empire dates back to the beginning of the Second Era, when when the Narthan tribe settled the city of Nartha. The Narthan tribe was a militaristic and expansionist tribe, and so the new kingdom of Naraka, as it would become known, began to lead a series of conquests against its neighbors. In 36 of the Second Era, a man named Marcus declared himself as Manav, king of Nartha. His successors continued to lead massive conquests against their neighbors until 100 of the Second Era, when they encroached on the territory of the then Great Republic of Algamor, as you can see on the map. Algamor at this time was one of the most powerful republics of the world. It was the only powerful republic, and definitely was much more stronger than Naraka. So, before we talk about the wars that happened, we need to talk about King Simeon II, sorry, from 98 to 112. King Simeon II was an ambitious king, an aggressive monarch, an absolute autocrat and tyrant, and he was very arrogant in his decision making. Fun fact, Simeon was 16 when he inherited the throne. He was also very spoiled. The south of Nartha, towards Algamor, is rich in soil and contains large amounts of animals such as horses, cattle, and sheep. This is why the Narakans, or Narthans, wanted to have that place, as it would give them good fertile land, which was rare in the northern parts. The Narthans weren't always powerful. In 102 of the Second Era, the Algamors declared war on Naraka after they refused to retreat their soldiers from a tributary state that belonged to Algamor. These tributary states would be settled by Algamoran people, and in return, Algamor would not enforce their laws on them, but they would have to pay tribute and swear an oath of loyalty to Algamor. So this war would become known as the First Agar-Narthan War, which was an Algamoran victory. Despite winning a nearly decisive victory, the initial peace deal was very tame and only saw Naraka cede certain territories to Algamor. However, this peace would only last for 20 years, as in 126, Naraka would declare war on Algamor. In this war, the Algamors managed to conquer and plunder the city of Nartha before making Naraka into a vassal for many years. So, before we go up north, set and stage, we need to discuss why did Naraka lose these wars. Algamor had a much better leadership. Its leadership was much more determined by merit rather than, your position and your. Next up, there were the Narthan soldiers were often left unpaid, while Algamoran soldiers were well paid and well fed generally. Algamor had much more secure supply lines. They were able to give their soldiers everything they needed. Naraka wasn't able to do that. Algamoran soldiers were much more trained in combat. They were much more trained, and so you see that these soldiers are much more better equipped for combat than Naraka. And finally, Algamore had more resources to use than the Narthans. So, to put it bluntly, they had more resources and things such as iron slash bronze and, wood, food, water, that stuff. They had more of it, and so they could use more of it, setting the stage for a great ruler. For around 40 years, the Narthans were under the domination by Algamort. They were forced to sorry about that. They were forced to abide by Algamoran law, they were forced to pay tribute to their overlords, and they were also forced to send their own men to die for the Algamoran Republic. This was considered taboo by many people, and which led to numerous riots and attempted revolutions, leading to the second burning down of Nartha in 147 of the Second Era. Another thing to discuss that's very important is how the Narthans felt of Algamore. They thought of them as disgusting people from the south, desert people that had come to the north to steal their fertile land which was rightfully theirs. This was a viewpoint of the people at the time, which is why there was so much bad blood between the two of them, especially after the wars took place. Now, Naraka began revolting against Algamore in the 150s, leading to the Third Anglo-Narthan War. Marcus. Marcus was born December 22nd, 157 of the Second Era. He grew up learning military tactics with a stern mother by his side. He grew up with no real father, and instead was taught by his uncle, who was the brother of the king at the time. Marcus wanted to grow up to be a masterful military general, and he certainly was a fast learner and a capable thinker, even in his early youth. However, when his uncle Agosto died without a child, he ascended to the throne, being the closest in succession. This is a map of Naraka when Marcus took over circa 179 2E. He did what? King Marcus was an expansionist and had dreams of creating a continental empire. So we got a great ambitious king who is actually very smart. So yes, he was also known to be a pragmatist too, and often waited for his perfect time to strike. He led many conquests through Ari during his reign. So he conquered lands such as Algamore, Marthias, and the desert lands and beyond. He reigned in total over 130 years, by far making him one of the longest reigning monarchs in the history of Nern. However, these would eventually come to bite him in the rear when he died in lands in the south known as the Timberlands. And this is a map of his empire when he died. So where my mouse is at, towards the west, where this white is Marthia. He settled the great city of Marthia, and I'll talk about that later. Down here is the Timberlands over here, but he was only able to get this part due to the wood terrain that he wasn't used to. He died by being shot several times with arrows in a campaign night when he was speaking to his soldiers. The center desert regions are here, they're very deserty, and the desert kind of runs off through here. Then here we got some really nice grassy territory that did help with the agriculture of the entire empire. So, and then up here, of course, is the capital, which meant that, it was very hard at first, seemingly, to administrate their lands. How did he conquer these lands? He did military reforms, which left him one of the strongest armies on Ari. He established a professional army and introduced a system where his soldiers would always get paid on time. He ruled over a time in which Algamore had been weakened by revolts, corruption, etc., scandals. He regularly outsmarted his enemies and made strategic moves when he could. So he did make many strategic moves and was able to use his strategies to beat the Algamorans many times. He didn't just conquer lands, but he used the kingdom's wealth to help fund administrators. So, essentially, when he conquered new areas, he would quickly use his wealth he'd build roads first. Roads were very important to him, and so he always made sure to build roads. He then would go on to send administrators to the area who were based on merit and not, based on father to son. With this, he helped to administrate his lands a lot easier. Roads, sewage systems, housing, and lots of infrastructure. Marcus was not only a conqueror, but a builder and a reformer. In his reign, he changed the laws of his kingdom, implementing the policy of innocent till proven guilty, and he scaled back on some of the more brutal punishments, reserving them for the most heinous actions. He also built a lot of infrastructure, including roads, houses, sewage systems, farms, mines, and much, much more. In his reign, he founded the city of Marthia, which would later become one of the most important cities in the entire world. And we will get that sometime in the future. He also reconstructed Nartha to its former glory and even went as far as to improve the city. You see, when he took over, the city had been destroyed numerous times, and his reign, he was able to not only rebuild it back up, but then he made it even better, one of his most impressive parts of his reign. How did he do this? Where did he get the money from? And that's very simple. He had some pretty unfair taxes throughout his empire, mainly focused on those with money. Now, it's not like these were extremely high, but they were enough to fund his projects, and many people didn't like them, which led to some tax revolts. The kings of North are also known for their private industries. So, for example, King Marcus owned many mines across the kingdom and made money out of each and every one of them, a surplus, if you will. And then finally, many of his conquests included plunder, especially in places like Algamore, which were much more developed. But there was lots of loot to sell. And so when you get all these combined, a great military strategy leader who is ambitious and wants to create a massive empire, who is also very smart. And then you got Algamore, who is on the decline. And then you also got a lot of land, which is free to pick up. You get something like this, which is one of the largest empires in the history of Ari. And so, that's it. Thank you guys for watching so much. If you have any questions or anything to say, please leave them in the comments. You can like, subscribe, do all that stuff. I couldn't care less. Make sure to check my community posts, as I do make frequent posts on my community tab. Anyways, I hope each and every one of you has a good day and night, and I will see you some other time.